Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. I'm Casey Campbell. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, and we have a major announcement today. And of course, when we bring on MHSA Executive Director Mark Ewell, you know that there's some news, or we have some stuff to talk about. Of course, Winter's Contact Sports are back. They start next Monday. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Kind of explain what today's announcement was.
So today's announcement is going to let those kids in basketball, ice hockey, competitive cheer, and wrestling get started right along with their other winter sports. You know, our goal going back to last July has been 3 seasons this year that all reached the finish line. Since we last visited Casey, we were able to get fall finished. And, really the last 2 weeks, the complete and total focus has been on how can we get winter started. And we cited a great deal of data that was collected in our own state through fall, as well as the pilot program, as well as providing data from other states. There are 38 other states currently playing all winter sports, including all 3 of our neighbors, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Ohio. Michigan's had daily case numbers and positive rates decrease since mid-November. But our 3 geographic neighbors have had those same decreases. So it really does show that indoor contact sports can be done, and it can be done safely. And again, we have to credit and thank Governor Whitmer and HHS Director Hertel. I don't know what has changed over the last few weeks, but we just continue to provide data and information to those decision makers. And I know a lot of other people around our state have stepped up and shared their point of view and were heard. And at the end of the day, kids in Michigan won today, and that's really the headline.
So I know there's a lot of things I want to ask you about. So I think that, kind of explain where the seasons are at, how many games that they're going to be allowed in, in boys basketball, girls basketball, hockey, wrestling, and cheer. Kind of explain how many games are going to be played, and then kind of go into, some of the requirements regarding masks and testing.
So in terms of the number of games, it's really going to depend. We did nothing with the total number of allowed games. So the maximum number is still the maximum number. So let's take basketball, for example. So starting next week, they've got 6 weeks before our district tournament starts for both boys and girls. Basketball teams can play 3 games in a week. So if they're able to get in all 3 games over the next 6 weeks, there's 18 of what normally would be a 20-game season. One little twist that we gave our basketball schools this year is we're going to give you all the way up until the day of our state finals. You can play regular season games. So once you get eliminated from the district or the regional, if you want to find another school who's kind of in the same boat that would like to play a game or 2, you're going to be able to do that. The same approach in ice hockey. They're going to be able to play their maximum games in a week. Same thing, they can continue to play games even after they're eliminated from the tournament. So believe it or not, our winter teams in these 4 sports are going to get awfully close to what's normally allowed. Wrestling is probably the one exception. We're only letting them during COVID compete twice a week. Competitive cheer has no weekly limitation. So they could have competitions 6 days a week, theoretically. So there is going to be some local control there as well. In the sports of basketball and ice hockey, the way it's going to work is that face masks are required at all times, during practices, during games, as well as when you're on the floor competing. We're still trying to learn some more details about what a testing option would be for schools in basketball and ice hockey. Can a team opt to go the testing route? If one team goes with the testing route, but the team they're playing is going to wear face masks and not test, how do we handle that situation? Could 6 kids on a team opt for the testing route, the other 6 kids opt for the face mask? So those are some details. Again, it's not our order. It's MDHHS's order, and we're going to simply follow it and what's required, but we know that more information is coming there. Wrestling will be the one sport, Casey, where there will be required rapid testing. The state will provide the test free of charge to schools. And instead of the pilot program, which required 3 tests a week, you simply have to pass a rapid test the day of competition. So if you have one wrestling meet on Thursday, you'll need to take a rapid test earlier in the day on Thursday. If you're negative, you're able to compete, and away you go. So if you're competing once a week, you'll take 1 test a week. You're competing twice, you take 2 tests a week, and so on and so forth. And then cheer got better defined, just in terms of, cheer is a sport where you're never in close proximity to an opponent. When you're performing, it's with your teammates. There's no contact with other teams, and so we got some good clarification there as well.
And of course, the tests are going to be provided by MDHHS for no charge.
That is correct. We understand that the federal government has provided states with lots of COVID dollars, and we understand that all of these tests to schools, because right now MDHHS is providing these rapid tests where a lot of schools are allowing their staff members to test themselves each day to make sure that they're staying safe. So it's part of that program. And again, you have to give our credit to MDHHS for making that happen, especially in our wrestling community.
So I want to kind of go into that. If somebody doesn't feel comfortable, if the teams decides, okay, we're not wearing masks, 6 of us aren't wearing, we're going to go the rapid testing route. Would it be kind of a concern if a majority of schools say we're going to do this? Do you think that would cause problems with MDHHS, or how do you see that playing out if a majority of schools decide to go that route?
So certainly in wrestling, they have no choice. Either you're gonna test in wrestling, and by the way, with testing in wrestling, those kids are able to compete during matches without a mask, because obviously lots of breathing and airway issues. Right. Normally in wrestling, and then to require a mask would make that even more challenging. So wrestling is really an issue we can take off the table. We're going to follow whatever the order says. So in terms of upsetting MDHHS, we're going to follow what their order says, and we need to get clarification. Is for example, in a sport like basketball, is the order going to say masks on everyone? Does the option of testing apply to basketball schools? And if it does, is it all or nothing? Does it have to be entire teams? Does it have to be both teams? How are those different questions going to be handled? And again, we understand that we'll have those details here sometime by Sunday.
Okay, so winter contact sports are going to resume on Monday. Spring sports, where are we at on that? Is there going to be any delay with that? And I know that I think I asked something like this. Do you see any issues with spring sports regarding if any of them are going to be listed as contact sports?
So I think the only 2 spring, I'll take your answers actually from last to first. The only 2 spring contact sports we would have would be boys lacrosse and girls soccer. And given our fall experience with everything being outdoors, I have high confidence for all of our spring sports. Now, in terms of the start date, we are currently scheduled to start spring sport practices on March the 15th. We are going to get some feedback from our schools here within the next few days. Spring sport practices will still start in March, Casey, but given the fact we now know when winter can start and we know when it ends, there's obviously more overlap this year than there ever has been with winter and spring. And we'll see with our schools to better manage indoor facilities, knowing that weather is such a wild card in our state. We're going to see that would schools be in support of, delaying the start of spring practice by a week, or by probably a maximum of 9 days. And don't forget, we realized that spring lost an entire season last year, but one way that we tried to jumpstart spring is we let all of our spring teams and coaches have full squad workouts, 16 dates. They could have had full squad workouts outdoors. Ironically, in September and October, the weather was fantastic, to where they got to put in a lot of work with their kids back in September and October. So a delay of just a handful of days, I don't think is going to be a major issue for spring. We are going to get started in March. All of our spring dates are going to stay exactly where they're at, because there hasn't been any support to push spring back any later. Now, the caveat, of course, is if we would have another delay or a pause, then all bets are off and we would need to potentially go back to the drawing board to see what we have yet to play and how much time is left. But that kind of scenario is we sit out here today.
Well, let's go back to winter and, how long are these seasons going to last? I know I kind of asked you this in the beginning, but now that the ending dates are going to be, how long, like we talked about basketball, it looks like April 9th and 10th are going to be the finals for that. And then go into wrestling for teams and individuals. Those are two separate things.
Yep.
Cheerleading and then ice hockey. Are we still good on maybe Breslin for boys and girls basketball, and then maybe USA for hockey? And where do you think wrestling and cheer finals? Where do you think they fall?
So our conversations with the basketball finals are ongoing with Breslin.
Okay.
We would love, just as we did with football in the fall and cross country in the fall, that those events, for the ones that are able to end in its normal spot, we think that's really important. Certainly wrestling is going to be the biggest challenge. For folks to think that we're going to have all 4 divisions together at Ford Field, very, very unlikely. With our wrestling finals, we could have a case of each of the 4 divisions going to 4 separate sites. We could possibly have 2 divisions going to one site, the other 2 divisions to a second site. We're looking right now at what USA Hockey's availability is with their building, the same with the Deltaplex and Cheer. Do know that when it comes to spectators, we assume that we're going to be somewhat limited. So it does give us a lot more flexibility being able to go to a lot of other venues if you don't have the seating and capacity requirements that you would have in a normal year. So now that we got the start dates and the end dates set, really the next biggest lift will be finalizing all of those venues.
And of course, you bring up a good point with spectators. They said, I think, in the press conference today, and I think you said it in your Zoom call with over 100 reporters from all across the state, which is always good to see. You said that we're going back to the 2 spectators like we had in the beginning with football. Is that true with that?
So we're trying to get that clarified, because if you read the order, Casey, as it was released today, there's 3 numbers in the order. In some venues, it's a 100-person limit. Other types of venues, it's 250. And then something that has over 10,000 seats normally, that's got a 500 limit. The thing that gives us a little bit of pause is Director Hotel. Either it was in response to a question today or was simply a comment, and she referenced what we've used for much of this school year was 2 spectators per participant. So that's just a question that we've got to get clarified. Is it one of the 3 numbers in the order, or is it actually the 2 spectator per participant? And again, that's an answer that we'll have here hopefully in the next day or so.
Where do you see wrestling finals going? Because you weren't really sure about where they were going to be at.
No idea. We could be at 4 different high school sites. We could be at 2 different larger sites. Again, if you're trying to keep these events as small as you can, trying to limit as much contact and exposure, 4 separate finals at 4 separate sites makes some sense. The challenge, of course, is now you need 4 separate hosts. You need 4 groups of volunteers at each of those sites, rather than kind of pooling your resources when you're at a single site. So we'll see how all that plays out.
Also, this kind of got brought up. Do you see a scenario where spring sports, do you think they may have to have masks on, maybe like lacrosse players or girls soccer players like we had in the fall with boys soccer and football? Do you see that as a scenario? Or maybe we could add baseball and softball. Do you think they might have to do it as well?
I don't think you would see it in baseball and softball. Those are sports to where, when there are times where social distancing can't be maintained, it's instantaneous and fleeting. And Casey, I saw a ton of travel baseball and softball last summer, and nobody wore a mask, and I am not aware of one issue in those sports. Again, you're outdoors, it's easy to do. Probably the biggest risk in baseball and softball is when kids are in the dugout. It's not with your opponent and other teams. Boys lacrosse, all helmeted sports, we're kind of handling the same way, to where the clear plastic shield or visor works. That's what we did in football. That's what we're doing for hockey. So I think boys lacrosse probably takes care of itself. And then the real question is that one sport of girls soccer. I do know that enforcement of masks in boys soccer was a challenge last fall, and we'll just see what the spring holds. But truth be told, when it comes to masks and those things, our total focus right now is on what's required of our winter sports, and we'll cross that spring mask bridge here shortly.
Yeah, I kind of want to. You mentioned something about hockey. They wear the clear plastic shields, but they also said that masks were required. Is it going to be similar like what we saw with football? Are they going to have like the spit shield guards in there, so they may just maybe pull up or something, or maybe wear it across like I've seen on different things? How are hockey teams being viewed as that?
I think it's going to be very similar to football. The mask requirement was in place during football season. It's really no different than what the mask requirement is now, Casey. So our approach with our football schools, I see that being replicated for hockey, and probably reused one last time when we get boys lacrosse helmets this spring.
Okay. So also when we look at, the conversations you said when Director Hertel got there after Director Gordon abruptly resigned, did you see more conversation with the health department in the last few weeks, and do you know somehow why, or do you know, or what?
So the communication was better. I can say that, we've had communication with different staff members at MDHHS, and many of them are wonderful. And that's been a good working relationship. I can just tell you that the whole tenor of communication and information did change here in the last few weeks. So I really haven't spent any time reflecting or really analyzing it. Our focus is really looking forward. And once we got the answer of yes earlier today, our complete focus here was, okay, now how do we make this work for our kids? And we're going to spend our time looking forward and very little time looking back.
Just to clarify, I know that we've covered a lot. Just kind of repeat all the state finals and where they are at, if you can.
Sure. So in terms of those dates, ice hockey and competitive cheer, both of those finals are going to be the weekend of Saturday, March the 27th. So those are two sports to where their regular season window is going to be pretty condensed, but those are two winter sports that will finish by the end of March. Wrestling, their tournament is going to start in mid-March with our individual finals finishing up. Our team finals will be on March the 30th, and those individual finals will be on April 2 and 3. And then the 3 weeks of our basketball tournament, the district week will be the week of March the 22nd, regional week the week of March the 29th, and then that first full week of April will be the quarters, the semis, and the finals, with basketball concluding girls finals on April 9, boys finals on April 10.
Yeah, it's definitely good to see all these pushback but actually happening. So also you don't think that anything with the push by several big name coaches and rallies at the Capitol, you didn't think that anything that had to do with the today's announcement by the governor, right?
I think that'd be a question for the governor. I'm not gonna try and figure out what did. I just know what we did was just to continue to be very data driven, just continue to put information and facts. I know that an awful lot of people have stood up and their voices were heard, whether that was those at the demonstration last Saturday, coaches that have spoken out. We've had lots of superintendents and boards of education that have been very outspoken, and certainly the Let Them Play group has been very vocal, and again they've cited a lot of numbers and statistics. So this was really a group effort to again just continue to advocate for young people, and that's why today is such a big win for our kids.
All right, Mark Ewell, the executive director of the MHSAA. Thank you for taking some time to join us, and let's do this again in a few months to give us an update on everything going on.
Thanks, Casey.